Hi, my name is Jordan Lawson. This is my wife, Kylie Lawson.
Hi.
And we've been married for
Almost 2
almost 2
years.
years.
Yeah.
2 years this July. So we're pros at marriage by now, so it's great. But anyway, I grew up in Kaysville, Utah.
I grew up in a lot of different places. Most recently, my family's lived in Honeyville. It's just a little place by Brigham City. We've always lived in the middle of nowhere, though, so.
The thing that I'd want people to know about our story is that hope comes from a relationship with God, with being close to Him and finding faith that through whatever struggles we experience, we can find peace in those struggles and gain strength through them. I'd say my upbringing was pretty average. I grew up with two older sisters, a younger brother. Parents have been great, very loving, and I am who I am because of them. They have always been a good example of living the gospel and staying strong to their beliefs. They help me to gain my testimony. They help me to learn how to live the gospel, not just learning from them, but seeing them live the gospel. That was probably the most poignant thing and greatest gift they've given me.
My childhood was blissful. I don't remember, there were, little hard things, but for the most part, I got along with my siblings, and my parents were great, and they taught me that family is important, and that together you can get through anything. And working hard is really good to do, and I love my family. They have been my best friends for my whole life.
The subject of same-sex attraction, the subject of homosexuality, whatever else, that it didn't really come up in my home or anything like that. It was kind of a taboo thing. If it was talked about, it was not like a derogatory sense, but it wasn't looked highly upon. And so I think for growing up and when those feelings started to appear, it was terrifying to come to the realization that yes, I do experience same-sex attraction, and I didn't want to disappoint my family. I didn't want to let them know that I struggled with that, and I didn't want to disappoint them, because my fear was that, because everything I'd heard about same-sex attraction is if you felt that way, you went and you lived a different lifestyle than the lifestyle I wanted, the lifestyle that I was raised in, and it was contrary to everything I wanted to be in life. And so I feared that by sharing, yes, I do experience same-sex attraction, that I would end up, in a way, being forced to live a lifestyle I didn't want to live.
My family, I don't really remember talking about same-sex attraction with my family. It was something that I would hear kids at school talking about more often than not, and it was almost always in a derogatory sense. And so that's how I don't know. I viewed it as something that I didn't want, and I didn't understand it. All I knew was that people didn't like people who experienced same-sex attraction. I didn't know anyone, but people around me didn't like it, and so that's kind of what I grew up with.
With growing up and not speaking about my same-sex attractions and hiding that for so many years, it created a high sense of self-loathing and shame. Because of that, there are things that I think I've missed out on my life because I was terrified of letting any of that show, of any amount of stereotypical femininity or anything in regards to letting people find out, because I didn't want to be shamed. I didn't want to be shunned. I think that's been one thing that's helped me back a lot in my life is feeling like I had to prove myself to everyone and be some sort of spiritual giant or whatever it is to be the type of person that people would like to be someone that people would want to be around. And I thought if people knew that they wouldn't want to be around me, they wouldn't want to be my friend. The way that my SSA has affected my friendships and relationships growing up is that when I did find friends, I would tend to cling to them. I would do everything I could to make those friendships work, and I worked very hard at being a devoted friend and giving everything I had to being the friend that those people would need. I don't think that's a flaw or a bad thing, but I think the level of dependency I had on those friends was probably very draining on them, and draining on me for worrying and being so concerned that I might lose these friends. That realm of dependency is something that I've really strived to kind of get away from, and in learning more about what it means to experience same-sex attraction. In growing up with my spirituality, me being the type where I was very dependent on people, I learned to be very dependent on God as well. Spirituality has been a very strong part of who I am, and I think that's what's gotten me through a lot of my struggles in life, and including my struggles involved with same-sex attraction. There have been times when I've been angry at God for giving me this particular trial, or however it came about that I had to deal with it, but I feel that it is my relationship with God that has brought me the peace and happiness that I have in my life, and that's why I've become the person that I am. As a teenager, growing up with, when it started to manifest itself and learning that, okay, I think I have these feelings that I don't understand, it put me in a place of great despair. I remember many times coming home from high school and being so confused about what I was experiencing, the attractions to the other guys, not understanding what was going on. I'd get home some nights, just sob in my bedroom, and like many I've heard of before, they just asked God to take away these feelings that I didn't want to deal with. I didn't want to experience these things, and I knew that God loved me. There was never a time in my life where I doubted that God loved me. That was the testimony that I had, and I figured that I knew that he's all powerful. He could take it away if he wanted to. And as a teenager, not knowing what this was or why I experienced it, I still felt that I couldn't blame him for it. I couldn't just say, okay, so because God gave me this struggle, whatever it is, that it's his fault. I couldn't pin that on him, because I believe in a benevolent being, a benevolent Heavenly Father that cares and loves for me, for who I am, and that he would want me to be happy. Honestly, to admit that to myself and to know what I was experiencing, that took many years to kind of come to terms with. So one thing that I feel like I can bring to the Voice of Hope project, and I don't know if it's been discussed before, is I experience a fetish. Something that I don't think I'll fully describe here, because I don't think that would be helpful, but I think there are many that experience an attraction to something that isn't technically or necessarily something that one would find obvious. So there's a particular area of a man's body that I find more attractive than other things, and I fixated on that. And I think because of that, I didn't really, they were just odd feelings. I couldn't say I'm gay, because it's like, okay, I'm fixated on this one piece of masculinity, whatever you want to call it. And because of that, I didn't know what I was dealing with. So beginning where puberty kind of started, these feelings started to come up of, okay, I'm missing something, I'm lacking something, I don't know how to get it. And I was blessed and cursed with a very creative mind, and gifted in art and writing, and I began to experiment with creating little comic books and writing different things, and I discovered that through that I could become aroused. And so in essence, I would I began to experiment with that, and I created my own brand, my own version of pornography. And as shameful as that is to say that, yes, I use my talents, my gifts to kind of create that, I realized and I recognized that that was something that I was doing to try to help myself, to try to figure out what I needed and to create a safe place. And yes, I do regret using my talents in that way, but I realized that I was in a place of desperation and confusion, and these feelings were coming up, and I found them relieving. And so as I got older and moving forward with this issue of this fetish and feeding it through my artwork, through literature, I found myself turning more and more. It became more of a fixation. It became more of it was as a child, as someone just 9, 10, 11, it was very cartoonistic artwork, and as I became older, I would delve more into more realism and more human, and more the images that I would create became more based on that certain aspect that I'm attracted to, that fetish. But it made it so I started to become attracted to a certain kind of man, and that's kind of where I think it began to become more same-sex attracted related, I guess. When it came around time I was 16, 17, I discovered pornography that basically played on my own fetishes, and I explored that quite a bit, trying to find whatever it was that I was looking for, not understanding what I had gotten myself into, and I guess I didn't feel like it was pornography at first. I didn't, like, I knew it was arousing, but it's like this isn't stuff that deals with sex. It doesn't deal with multiple people. It's something so specific and so abnormal psychology, if that's what one would call it, which I would, that if I were, I figured I probably should talk to a bishop, but I didn't know what to say. I didn't know where to go with this because it was so bizarre, so different, that I was just terrified. I was like, what, are they going to put me in the nut house? Are they going to, I didn't know how people would react, and I was very alone in this aspect. Didn't know who to turn to, where to turn, and too afraid to even go anywhere with it. So going on with my life, I felt too ashamed to admit this to a bishop, and yet I ended up going on a mission. Yes, my same-sex attraction feelings had begun building at that time, and at the same time, I focused on the missionary work. I was not a perfect missionary. I had my struggles dealing with same-sex attraction and other things, and at the same time, I loved the Lord's work. I loved getting to know my mission companions. I loved serving the people that I encountered. With all my self-doubts and confusion and shame, I feel like I really held myself back, though, on my mission to a certain extent. But I eventually did come into myself, and I got into the work, and I really learned how to love the people that I served unconditionally, and learned to really care for my companions, and it was a time of healing. I mean, I did have friends growing up with that I was very close to, and close cousins that I'd hang out with on a frequent basis. But it was, I think in my mission, I finally realized that, okay, other guys would want to be friends with me, that was okay, and that I'd be desirable as a friend. And I served an honorable mission. I worked hard, and came home, and like many, that's kind of when I didn't have my support group of my mission buddies. I didn't have these friends that were close by, and everything dealing with pornography, the things that I was experiencing kind of exploded again. It just came right back up to the surface. Right after the mission, I didn't recognize the amount that these mission companions had helped me, and to help me to be stable and to be happy. I came back home and I didn't really, I did have some good masculine friendships, but I think the intimacy of teaching the gospel, of having a strong spiritual connection and emotional connection with these guys was something that I didn't realize was so critical for my own needs and my own growth. It was a real battle coming home and not having that masculine friendship around me, to that level, to that extent, that I really battled. I really struggled to try to feel stable, to feel happy. I remember coming home and being released, and I just sobbed. And my family recognized that I was having a really hard time adjusting back into regular life, and that first year home was really hard. But then Heavenly Father really stepped in, and He's always been there to help me, and He blessed me with a calling that allowed me to work with the missionaries in my stake, and I began to develop close friendships with these missionaries, and I ended up moving at that point up to Rexburg, and started an education in art up at BYU, Idaho. And one of my roommates was one of these missionaries that I'd become good friends with. And I had a really good apartment full of guys that were they were very kind to me, very good. And so it was amazing to have that closeness right after that year-long struggle. I had those friends again, and I had that support system that I needed. And then the bomb dropped when they all started getting engaged, and I wasn't. And that it was within that first semester. They call it BYU I do for a reason. It seemed like everyone I knew was getting engaged and married, and I was not. I was struggling with these issues and not understanding what was going on. And as my support system was seeming to collapse around me, I went to a period where I was having a really hard time dealing with those things, and trying to figure out what it was that I was lacking. I think it was my college years there that the same-sex attraction really reared its ugly head and became a burden at that point, really. And that's when it spiraled into where it's been the worst, I suppose. At the same time, being in a church school really benefited me. Being in a classroom where we would pray to begin our studies, and being around all that was good for me. I was able to stay close to God and not totally spiral out of control at that point. I tried to date as much as I could. Like I as a child, like, it was my greatest dream. I wanted to be married. I wanted to be married in the temple. I wanted a family. I wanted a wife. That's always been something that I've desired. And so that was the greatest conflict in my heart. It's like, okay, I have these feelings, but I have these desires also that I want to have a woman to be with. I want to have someone that I can be close to and have that intimacy. I grew up, a lot of my really good friends were girls, and I felt I was able to connect with them really easy, and that was just natural. And so to have the desire to be married to a woman it's always been strong, and always have been what I've always wanted. And so with this conflict of same-gender attraction at that time and trying to date, and it was really hard. So in regards to these feelings that I had and these desires that I had, these feelings I knew they weren't a positive thing. They weren't a good thing. They led me to areas of my life where I felt the greatest amount of shame. And I didn't necessarily want to follow those feelings. I knew those feelings weren't going to take me somewhere I wanted to be. Yet my desires to live in the gospel, to find someone that I could be with for eternity, was stronger than those desires. So in my dating experience, trying to find a woman that was compatible, the main thing I was searching for was someone that had a level of spirituality that I could connect to. Because I had mission companions that I had this deep spiritual connection with, and that was a powerful thing. And so I wanted a woman in my life that could be to that level with me. And so, just throw this out there to any of the girls that I had dated, I wanted to because they were spiritual, and I found them to be spiritual giants. And so it wasn't about the physical attraction for me. Yes, there had to be a degree of that, but that wasn't my main pull. I actually met a girl up at college that I actually found very attractive, and she was very sweet, and I got up the courage to ask her out, and we ended up dating for about 3 months, and it was a good experience, but I wasn't dealing with my issues. I hadn't figured anything out yet, and she broke the relationship off, and I don't know why to this day, but it very well could have been. I think what she had said, it just didn't feel right, and that just broke my heart. So after that relationship had ended, it kind of put me into a downward spiral. It was really hard to have found someone that I thought was going to be the person that saved me, honestly. The one person that I'd found that, like, there was an attraction there, I had butterflies, all of that was there, and it didn't work out. And I continued to try to date after that, but I just wasn't feeling it. And it took me a long time to get over that one, to get over her, because she was a really good person. She would just that level of spirituality that she had. You could tell that she was a good person. And anyway, I got really discouraged and down on myself, and I started to explore my same-gender attraction more. I started to look at more pornography, to walk down that road, because I thought, okay, well, the gospel's not paying off. It's not giving me, I'm not meeting that special someone that I want. So maybe I'll find that special someone in my own gender. And there was about a semester where I just gave up. I mean, like, I was still serving in my calling, and just living a double life. I was exploring and trying to find someone I could fall in love with. And the more I walked down that road, the more shame I felt, the more depressed I felt. And I realized at the end of one particular semester that I wasn't going to find someone that was going to help me be the person I wanted to be. It was a dead-end road, and I knew that even if I did go down that road, I met someone that someday I would want to come back to the gospel. There was no way. The gospel was the thing that made me happy, where I found peace. And by kind of mentally walking down that road, okay, let's say I went and lived the gay lifestyle. Lived somewhere where that was okay, and more thought about it. I was like, okay, well, that means, like, my family might abandon me. That's a big thing, and I wouldn't be involved with the gospel because the gospel makes me feel good. But if I'm trying to live both lives, I won't feel good in the gospel. So realizing that I'd come back anyway, it was like, well, why leave? Why leave something that I love? And then the very next semester, I decided to kind of switch things up. I moved from my apartment that I'd been in for the entire stay. It was my final semester up there. And finally went to a bishop and said, okay, I have these feelings and I don't know what this is. Or at least I didn't allow myself to realize what it was. And so I described to him my fetish, and the man actually chuckled. He just like a brief, and then he kind of switched like, okay. It was entertaining, but bless his heart, I don't think he knew exactly what it was. But by the end of the interview I had with him, he's like, I think you experienced same gender attraction. I was like floored. I was like, whoa, that's what that is. That makes a lot of. That's why I've been attracted to some of my roommates and stuff. Sorry guys, but so torn about different things, and that just like, okay, well, if I know what to call this, if I know at least a direction to take, I can take action. And so he gave me some good advice, gave me some good counsel, and I started to act on that. And that was kind of the point of like, okay, I can learn to deal with this. There's people I can talk to, and began sharing kind of my bits of my experience with my friends and with family members. And it opened up a whole new world of being transparent, of being okay with myself, with having people to turn to, whereas I was just hiding this and living kind of a double life. And it was amazing to have that change. So I'd gone for a couple of years of starting to go to counselors, therapists, what name you, and eventually I was at a point where I was like, okay, well, maybe this means that I won't get married in this life, and perhaps I just need to learn to be happy being single, and really dig deep into that and learn what that means. And lo and behold, as soon as I made that decision, Kylie shows up and changed my life.
I got an internship working at his dad's nursery, and we were both living with our parents in the same town, and his dad and my dad talked and decided that he and I should carpool. Like, they didn't tell us, they just like got the numbers and switched them. So the day before I started this internship, I got a call, and this guy was like, hey, we're gonna carpool, is that okay? And it was fine. I needed to save money. And he pulled up, and I opened the door, and he was beautiful. And like, time does slow down when you meet that like beautiful person. It was like slow down, like wind blowing. It was from the moment that I met him, I was attracted to him. And even though like at first it was very childish, I loved him right from the start. And I didn't realize that he didn't like me, because what he saw as friendly, I saw as flirting. And so like that even made it even more so that I was attracted to him.
I was oblivious. I was so focused on myself and like, okay, well, there's this nice young girl who's like fresh out of high school.
I had a year of college,
yeah,
thank
but
you.
You seem so young. I was 26. So there's many times where I was like, you're just a baby, and she gets so mad. Anytime.
So we worked together for a summer, and by the end of the summer, my dad sat me down. He's like, if you really like this guy, you either have to tell him that you like him or walk away, because you can't like spend a year waiting for him to ask you. You have to take a step. And so I was like, okay, I can't just flat out tell him that I like him. That was too scary for me. So I ended up asking him on a date, and
I was like shocked. I walked into my apartment that I was living at and like looked at my brother and my roommate who were living at the time, and I was like, I think she might be interested. Like, it just blew me away. So number one, because there's a 6.5 year age difference between us. So you were how old at the time?
19.
19, so I was 26.
Yeah, I was about to turn 20.
Yeah, so it was just really odd that she was interested in the first place.
The first date that we went on was really fun. I felt totally relaxed around him. I mean, I didn't feel like I had to impress him. I just felt like I was totally safe to be me, and that was so new for me. I felt like my whole first year of college, I had been trying so hard to not act like a freshman, to act a little bit older than I was, so that the people in my ward would be okay hanging out with me. And then all of a sudden, here's this guy who's just okay with me, and it was great.
So second date though, I was at the point where I was like, okay, well, I either need to just let her know so she doesn't like get her heart broken later when I'm like, okay, well, I have these feelings, and I didn't want to be a deal breaker. Like, I knew it was, so I was like, well, before we get to the point where it just shatters our heart, I might as well just come out and say it. So kind of inside, like, okay, it might be a good thing that it just scares her off, because then I'm off to like explore a relationship right now, because I was still like, okay, I need to fix myself first.
Went on a little river trail up Logan Canyon, and there was this little bench, and we sat down, and I thought that he was going to tell me that I was moving too fast, that he wanted to take it slower than I wanted, because I had been dropping in as many hints as I possibly could. But he sat down and he told me that he experienced same-gender attraction. And for me to hear that, it was a surprise, but then it made sense why he had been holding back, because he had been. Sorry. But at the same time, I don't know. I had been told by the Spirit many times during that summer when we were working that he and I would get married. And so to have him say that was kind of a shock, but at the same time, I knew that if I chose to continue dating him, that God would help. That he was okay with the relationship. He had prompted me that it was okay, but that it was totally up to me if I wanted to be in this relationship or not. But I knew that if I chose to it was like a distinct fork in the road. If I chose to just be friends with him, then it would change everything. And not necessarily in a bad or good way, but just that my life would be totally different from what it is now. And so it was, after he told me, I felt a lot of weight about the decision, because I wanted to make the right choice. But I prayed about it a lot. I talked with my mom, who is great. And just her encouragement and the peace that I felt after just opening up to someone, I knew that it would be okay to at least continue dating to see where that went.
So I had told her on that day, like, okay, well, go home and talk to your, like we can try dating, but you need to know this first. And then, so go home, pray about it, talk to your parents. Like, if you feel like you want to continue, like, I'd be okay experiencing a relationship and just see where it goes. And like the day after, she called me up and said, I think I'm good to go. And I was like, part of me was like, is she crazy? But like, I'd known her long enough. I was like, no, she seems pretty stable. She seems sane. So might as well continue.
I'm glad you think so.
Little did I know. Anyway, so we dated and got engaged, and the whole time me wondering, like, can I do this? Is this okay to do? Like, can I marry a woman? Will it work? And by that time, I think Ty Mansfield's article in Elias Living had come out, and Josh Weed's I think his blog post that he had on Club Unicorn. Those things had come out, and I was like, oh, there are people that are doing what I want to do. So it gave me a lot of hope, and anyway.
We dated for about 6 months, and then
finally clued in that, okay, well, if this relationship is going to go anywhere else, I'm going to need to get married. So just a natural step. But it was, I mean, the whole time I'm wondering and doubting myself and wondering, okay, if I do this, am I going to fail? Am I going to eventually one day want to be in a different situation, like, and then want to come back to the gospel? Like, just fears about my own capacity to live the gospel. And that didn't go away even after we were married. I still struggle with that a lot.
Right after we got married, he pulled back because he was so afraid. And I didn't understand that at that point. I thought that I had done something wrong. And so I was trying desperately to show him that I loved him and that it was going to be okay when it wasn't me that was doing something. And like, it took me a really, really long time to see that. And so the first couple months were really rough. I didn't know how to communicate very well, and that just added to the stress. But after about 2 months, we ended up deciding that we needed help because we were not pros. Even though we told everyone that we met that we were professionals, we needed help. We had tried everything we knew, and so we talked to our bishop, and he recommended that we went to a marriage and family therapist, which was great.
That was, I mean, so there were several areas of our marriage that were struggling. I mean, sex being a big one, and communication errors, that sort of a thing. And so the therapist really helped us to kind of get things underway, and we really were able to progress. And but still struggle with several things. We ended up having different therapists for a while there, and nothing really changed. I mean, like we progressed. We went pretty far, but I was still having my doubts, and I didn't have any hope. I didn't have anything to hold on to. Nothing. Not a support structure that was powerful enough for me in my life, and I constantly just every day just like having to make a decision. Okay, like I can do this. Can we make this work? And
It was hard.
eventually, I was struggling. I had completely backed off in our marriage, and I wasn't happy. I didn't know what I was doing, and so I typed in online. I typed gay, Mormon, and married, and the things that I'd found before had popped up, but by this time North Star had come underway, and I don't know how blind I was or how I didn't find it, because it was like years after the fact, and where was I? But I started getting involved. I watched all the Voice of Hope videos that I had found, and
almost from the day that he found them, there was a change. He wasn't weighed down, and he had actually talked to me, not just like he wanted to talk to me. There was a big difference in him. He wasn't nearly as afraid as he was before.
In my hour of desperation, I just went online. All my research, nothing was working, nothing was helping, and so as soon as I found North Star and the resources available there, it was like I found a hope. I hadn't had that before.
We weren't alone.
We weren't alone. We saw different couples, different people, single and married, that were fighting to live the gospel, who were fighting to live the way that we should live. And I feel so blessed to be able to have found the resources that I found through North Star and through the amazing people that are involved. I'm happy now. I have people that I can talk to and people that understand and get where I'm coming from.
And we have resources and tools so that we're not just treading water, we're actually making progress. And it's amazing.
We're not lost in our marriage. We have direction. We have somewhere to go. Yeah. And with the resources we found in the gospel, it's just we can do this. We can make things work. So
It was really hard at first. I mean, it was amazing to see the difference in him, but I had to let go, and that was really hard. I had spent over a year like clinging to him, trying to show him that I loved him, because I knew something was wrong, even though I didn't understand completely. And then we found North Star and all these support groups, and gym was amazing, but I had to let him go and do these things. And it was really hard for me to do that, but even though it was hard to see him come back from those things and to see the weight lifted and the courage that he hadn't had before, it made it okay. And I learned to have a little bit of me time, and that was okay too. I learned it's still hard sometimes, but I've learned to be okay to let him go, because when he comes back, he is so much happier.
So, coming around full circle, I'd have to say that I'm so very grateful for my Heavenly Father for guiding me to these resources, to these people that have helped. I don't regret for a moment the years of struggle that I had to learn the things that I've learned. I'm not angry about experiencing same-sex attraction, or experiencing a fetish, or in general just being attracted to men. It's something that's blessed my life at this point. It's something that has brought me closer to my wife. that has given me so many gifts and blessings that I don't know how I would have learned these things any other way. It's my greatest trial has become my greatest blessing, and I'm thankful to a Heavenly Father that gives me weaknesses so that I can overcome them. And I'm grateful to have someone that's willing to go through these things with me.
I think, like you said, it's been a trial, but it's given us the opportunity to try to work through things faster. Because it's been hard, we've fought harder. And I don't know. We've come so far.
Yeah.
But it's been good.
And I hope we go a lot further.
We will.
We will.